Have you ever noticed that some of the harshest words people say are often introduced with the phrase, "I'm only saying this because I love you"? Sometimes those words are spoken with genuine love. Sometimes they're used to justify words that are anything but love. That phrase has caused me to stop and ask a question. What does Christ-like communication actually look like? The goal of this video isn't to ask whether Christians should speak the truth. We absolutely should. The question is whether we're speaking the truth in a way that accurately represents Jesus Christ. Recently, I was involved in an online discussion about gender dysphoria. As often happens with this subject, the conversation quickly became less about understanding people and more about making declarations to them. It made me stop and ask an important question. When Christians speak the truth, are we speaking in a way that reflects the heart of Christ? That question matters regardless of the topic. It matters when we're talking about marriage. It matters when we're talking about politics. It matters when we're talking about addiction. And it certainly matters when we're talking about gender dysphoria. One thing that concerns me is how often people dismiss gender dysphoria as if it's simply a choice someone decided to make. Gender dysphoria is a medically recognized diagnosis describing clinically significant distress related to an incongruence between a person's experienced gender and their biological sex. That definition doesn't answer every theological question, but it should answer one practical question. By definition, people diagnosed with gender dysphoria are experiencing real psychological distress. No one wakes up one morning and decides, "I think I'll experience psychological distress today." As Christians, we recognize that we live in a fallen world. When sin entered creation through Adam and Eve, the effects of the fall reached every part of life. Our bodies were affected, our minds were affected, our relationships are affected. All of creation bears the marks of living in a broken world. Disease, disability, mental illness, and countless other forms of suffering remind us that this world is not as God originally created it. They point us to our need for the day when Christ will make all things new. That does not mean every illness or psychological condition is the direct result of a person's individual sin. Jesus rejected that kind of thinking when his disciples asked about the man born blind in John chapter 9. So when someone is struggling, our first response should not be ridicule. It should be compassion. Jude 22 says, "And of some have compassion, making a difference." Compassion isn't weakness. Compassion is biblical. Now let's look at Jesus. How did he treat people who were rejected, marginalized, or struggling? Think about the woman at the well. Jesus knew everything about her life. He didn't ignore the truth. He spoke it plainly. He exposed her life without humiliating her. Instead, he used the truth to invite her to himself. Think about the woman caught in adultery. The crowd wanted condemnation. Jesus exposed the hypocrisy of those holding the stones. Then he told her, "Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more." Notice what he did. He neither excused her sin nor crushed her with it. He spoke both truth and grace. Think about the leper. Jesus could have healed him from a distance. Instead, he reached out and touched him before healing him. In a culture where people avoided lepers, Jesus moved toward him. Over and over throughout the Gospels, we read that Jesus was moved with compassion. Matthew 9:36 says, "But when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion on them." Jesus saw people. Then he was moved with compassion. Compassion wasn't an interruption to his ministry. It was part of his ministry. Jesus intentionally associated with people whom religious society rejected, not because he approved of everything they did, but because he came to seek and to save those who were lost. Now compare that to the people who received Jesus' strongest rebukes. It wasn't the broken. It wasn't the hurting. It wasn't the people everyone else looked down on. It was the religious leaders who claimed to represent God while misrepresenting his heart. In Matthew chapter 23, Jesus pronounced a series of woes against the scribes and Pharisees. Why? Because they burdened people instead of helping them. They loved appearances more than humility. They exalted themselves and they shut people out of the kingdom instead of pointing them toward it. Jesus even called them whitewashed tombs, beautiful on the outside, dead on the inside. Those are among the strongest words Jesus ever spoke. Why? Because religious hypocrisy pushes people away from God while claiming to speak for him. James 1:19 and 20 reminds us, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. For the wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God." That verse challenges me just as much as it challenges anyone else. It's easy to believe that we're defending the truth. It's much harder to ask whether we're reflecting the character of Christ while doing it. Recognizing gender dysphoria as a real medical diagnosis does not, by itself, answer every theological or ethical question about how Christians should respond to it. Faithful Christians have those discussions. But whatever conclusions we reach, they should never become an excuse to mock, to dehumanize, or to dismiss people who are genuinely suffering. So the next time we're tempted to begin a sentence with, "I'm only saying this because I love you," maybe we should pause and ask ourselves a different question. Will the words I'm about to say sound like Jesus? Will they reflect his truth? Will they reflect his compassion? Will they point someone to Christ? Or will they reflect my heart more than the heart of Christ? Before we tell someone, "I'm only saying this because I love you," maybe we should ask whether our words sound more like Jesus or more like the Pharisees. Truth matters. Compassion matters. Jesus never asked us to choose between them. He showed us how to hold them together, and that's the example I want to follow.